After 7 years of marriage, when I discovered his infidelity, I left without saying a word. A year later, he found me. Elena's life was simple and measured. Every day, she walked from her modest but cozy apartment to the city library, where she worked as a librarian. She loved her job and the silence, broken only by the rustle of pages and conversations with other book lovers. Mark, her husband, was the complete opposite. He worked as a sales representative and was incredibly charismatic. His smile was enchanting, his voice sounded confident, and his stories were captivating. He easily connected with people and closed lucrative deals. It seemed luck was always on his side. Elena loved him for this vibrant energy and for how he brought excitement into her quiet life. But over time, she began to notice another side of him. Mark was unreliable. His promises often went unfulfilled. His actions led to problems, and his charisma merely masked a lack of depth. Yet, she turned a blind eye, believing their marriage was strong, and that his minor flaws were just part of his character. Tomorrow was their 10th wedding anniversary. Despite his recent absent-mindedness, Elena believed Mark had prepared something special. Tuesday evening was strangely similar to many others. Mark came home late, as usual, exhausted, but this time unusually pleased. He spoke with genuine enthusiasm about a massive multi-million-dollar deal that had almost fallen through at the place in 26th last moment. But he, Mark, had heroically saved the situation with a brilliant maneuver. Elena listened half-heartedly, continuing to knit the collar of a new scarf that, ironically, was intended for him. He carelessly left his work laptop on the coffee table in the living room and, without wasting a second, headed to the shower, leaving behind a faint trail of the scent of his favorite body wash. Elena, accustomed to his constant messiness and absent-mindedness, reached out, mechanically to close the laptop and move it away so no one would trip over it. Her gaze fell on the screen, which, to her misfortune, was unlocked. On the Brenda browser screen, a hotel booking page was open. It was a small but incredibly fashionable boutique hotel in a neighboring city, known for its seclusion, exclusivity, and romantic, almost intimate atmosphere. Elena's heart skipped a beat, then another, and another. How sweet. The first naive thought flashed through her mind. He did book a room for our anniversary, after all. So, he remembered. He cared. A joyful, burning wave of warmth instantly flooded her chest, washing away the small, barely noticeable grievances that had accumulated over the last few weeks. She leaned closer to the screen to see the .com and is details. The booking date perfectly matched their anniversary. Everything was confirmed, but then her gaze, as if pulled by an invisible magnet, fell on the explanation, very last line. The guest name. Instead of the expected Mark and Elena, it read Mark and Veronica. Elena's world collapsed in a single, merciless moment. The sounds of the shower from the bathroom, which a second ago had seemed so familiar and soothing, suddenly became deafening and unbearable. The scent of Mark's body wash now seemed repulsive, making her feel nauseous. She recoiled from the laptop as if it were a red-hot stove. Veronica, who was Veronica? Of course, Mark often mentioned various clients, business partners, and colleagues in passing, but Veronica. Her heart pounded in her throat, her breath hitched, and her lungs felt as if they were filling with lead. This wasn't a minor misconduct or a forgotten promise. This was a carefully planned, cold-blooded act of treachery, scheduled for the most important day of their 10-year marriage. Tears welled up, burning and salty, but they didn't fall. Suddenly, like an icy wave, a strange, detached calm washed over her. There was no screaming, no hint of hysteria, not even a desire to throw the laptop against the wall. Only all-consuming emptiness and deafening clarity. She suddenly realized this wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable, logical conclusion of his unreliability, his deceit, and his astonishing shallowness, things she had so stubbornly, almost fanatically, refused to see for years. When Mark, fresh and smelling of body wash, walked out of the bathroom, Elena, was already sitting on the sofa, holding a thick book. She slowly looked up at him. There were no tears, no signs of anger, not even a hint of reproach. Only a deep, unbearable exhaustion. It was as if all the strength in the world had left her body. Mark didn't notice anything unusual, only slightly surprised by her silence and focused demeanor. "Everything okay, Ellie?" he asked lazily, carelessly drying his hair with a fluffy towel. "No, Mark, everything is wonderful," she replied. Her voice was even, almost lifeless, devoid of any intonation. He shrugged, deciding she was just tired, after a long workday, and, without waiting for more, turned the TV to a sports channel. To him, her existence seemed to be nothing more than a backdrop to his box's own bright, busy life. That night, Elena didn't sleep a minute while Mark snored peacefully beside her. In her mind, a clear, merciless plan unfolded. She stood up quietly, moving like a shadow so as not to wake him. Slowly, methodically, as if performing a carefully thought-out ritual, she began to pack. Not a bulky suitcase, but a small hiking backpack and a modest gym bag. The bare essentials. A few changes of clothes. Her most important documents, some cash she had always set aside for a rainy day, and a few of her most cherished books that reminded her of a carefree childhood and pure dreams. Her wedding ring, which had shone on her finger for 10 years, she removed without a single emotion and placed carefully on the nightstand next to the peacefully coarsened, sleeping Mark as a silent but eloquent symbol that everything between them was over. She didn't take anything extra, nothing that could link her to this life or this man. She didn't want anything from him. Not even a scandal. A scandal would have been too easy an exit for him, a simple way to offload his guilt. She felt surprisingly light, as if shedding a crushing, unbearable weight that had kept her from breathing fully for years. Every movement was measured, every step silent. When the first rays of dawn began to creep through the gaps in the curtains, she was already in the hallway, fully ready to depart. One last look at the sleeping Mark. His face was serene, almost childlike, devoid of any hint of worry or remorse. He didn't deserve her anger, her tears, or anything at all. She quietly unlocked the front door, stepped out, and closed it soundlessly behind her. The street held the pre-dawn coolness, carrying the scent of freshness and light fog. Elena breathed in the cold, clean air of freedom, air devoid of lies and betrayal. She didn't look back. She never looked back again. The past remained behind that door, like an old, useless book, closed forever. Elena boarded the first inner-city bus heading to a town she knew only from reference books and encyclopedias, a small but sufficiently developed regional center, located several exavolini, 100 miles from her former life. She ruthlessly cut all ties, like ropes binding her to a sinking ship. She changed her phone number and deleted all her social media accounts that could connect her to the past. She had no close relatives and no truly close friends with whom she could share her pain and plans. She was alone, completely alone in any lie, this vast, unfamiliar world. But this solitude no longer frightened her. On the contrary, it filled her with a surprising, newfound strength and determination. The first few months were the most difficult, requiring all her mental and physical strength. Her modest savings were enough only for a tiny room on the outskirts of town and the most basic food. Elena took a job in a small antique shop that, in addition to dusty figurines and old-fashioned furniture, sold rare, vintage books. It wasn't exactly what she had dreamed of, but it gave her the opportunity to be close to what she loved most, the world of the written word. Every day, returning home after exhausting work, she carefully wrote her thoughts, ideas, and deepest dreams in a thick notebook. Since her youth, she had harbored the idea of opening her own bookstore. But it wouldn't just be a shop. It would be a cozy corner where every visitor could have a fragrant coffee, immerse themselves in reading, and talk to like-minded people, where every book had its own unique soul and exciting history. Gradually, step by step, her cherished dream began to take clear, tangible shape. With her inherent meticulousness, she studied the local market, looked for suitable space, and saved every penny she earned, denying herself everything. Her seemingly modest skills as a librarian and social media manager proved incredibly useful. She taught herself bookkeeping, negotiated with suppliers for favorable terms, and created an attractive, recognizable design for her future store. A modest but stable income in the antique shop allowed her to save money, and her unwavering resolve pushed her forward. A little over a year after that fateful day when Elena radically changed her life, her dream finally became Savener reality. On a quiet, sparsely populated street, tucked between an old bakery that always smelled of fresh pastries and a cozy flower shop, Literary Haven opened its doors. That is what Elena called her brainchild, pouring all her soul and hope into the name. The small space, renovated by her own hands, and the help of a few new, loyal friends she had found in this city, was filled with the unique, intoxicating aroma of freshly brewed coffee, new paper, and old books. Soft, cozy armchairs, placed throughout the room, invited guests to stay a while. The shelves, made of cleistas, natural wood, were overflowing with carefully selected editions, from time-tested classics to vibrant new releases from independent publishers. Elena stood behind the counter with a constant smile, meeting every visitor, ready to grattling, recommend a book, or simply listen, nodding attentively. Literary Haven quickly, almost instantly, became a local landmark. Word of mouth worked perfectly. Visitors came not only for the books but for the unique atmosphere, the sincere communication, and the indescribable feeling of comfort that Elena created with her presence and attention. From a modest, almost invisible librarian, Elena had turned into a confident, radiant woman, the successful owner of a thriving business. In her eyes, there was now a lively spark that had never been there before, a spark of wisdom and strength. She had become the embodiment of her dream, living proof that one can rise from the ashes, stronger and more beautiful. One day, a little over a year after the day Elena radically changed her life, the door of Literary Haven slowly, almost silently opened, and a man appeared on the threshold. His appearance stood in stark, almost shocking contrast to the overall atmosphere of cleanliness, order, and aesthetics that reigned inside. He was unkempt, even ragged, and once obviously expensive shirt hung on his corner and his noticeably thinner body like on a hanger. His face was gaunt, his eyes dull, utterly hopeless, and full of despair. Unshaven stubble covered his cheeks, and his hair, once neatly styled and shiny, was now disheveled. He radiated the classic smell of yesterday's alcohol, stale tobacco, and unfulfilled, shattered hopes. He looked around slowly. His gaze was wandering, as if he didn't quite understand where he was or what he was doing here. He looked lost. Elena, standing behind the counter, was used to all kinds of visitors. She looked at him calmly, waiting for him to speak, showing no hint of surprise or hostility. Excuse me." The man's voice was hoarse and uncertain, as if he hadn't spoken in a long time. "Do you buy books here?" Elena nodded, maintaining her professional composure. "We accept books on consignment or for exchange, if they are in good condition and of interest to our shop. We have a very strict selection process." Yeah. He nodded as if agreeing with himself, trying to convince himself. "I have some old books, a home library. Well, not very old, but good." He awkwardly adjusted his shirt collar. I need money. Badly." He looked at her with a plea in his eyes. He stepped closer to the counter, awkwardly placing a large, clearly worn-out bag on the floor. The spines of books poked out of it, chaotically. Elena leaned down to examine them. Her gaze slid over the covers. They were ordinary, unremarkable editions, mass-market literature that held no collectible or artistic value. "Nothing special, you know," he continued. His voice sounded increasingly pathetic. "I used to have a good job, sales representative. Everything was handled, all the connections, all the clients. And then, well, it doesn't matter Basically, I got fired. Everything went to ruin. It just collapsed. My girlfriend, Veronica, left me too. As soon as she found out I lost my job, she said she didn't need any losers. I squandered all the savings I had. And now, I have to. He gestured to his pathetic appearance, his unkempt clothes, his empty hands. Elena listened to him completely calmly. Her face expressed neither sympathy nor surprise, nor even a shadow of recognition. She looked at him like any other stranger who had come to sell old, unwanted books. His words about Veronica and being fired didn't affect her at all. This was Mark, her ex-husband, the man whose cruel words had once destroyed her world. And now, his own world lay in with blank ruins. He didn't recognize her, not in her confident posture, not in her clear, deep gaze, not in her calm, even voice. There was nothing left in her of the modest, downtrodden librarian who had once allowed him to treat her however he pleased. "I am very sorry," Elena said, and her voice was polite but completely firm, without the slightest hesitation. "But unfortunately, we cannot accept these books. They do not fit our format or the concept of the shop. Perhaps you could try taking them to a regular secondhand bookstore that specializes in a wider assortment. Or, if you have anything rare, I can suggest a couple of addresses." Mark lowered his head, his shoulders slumping. "I understand. Sorry to have bothered you." He picked up his bag, which now seemed impossibly heavy. He sighed deeply and slowly, dragging his feet, shuffled toward the exit. His back was hunched. He was completely broken. His life force had left him. He had already reached for the door handle. His fingers slipped listlessly over the cold metal when a voice from one of Elena's assistants, addressing her directly, reached his ears. "Miss Elena, they brought you the new catalog from the publisher. Take a look. It's very interesting." Mark froze. His hand stiffened on the handle, as if he had turned into a statue. Elena. The name pierced him like lightning, forcing his heart to jump from a sudden, sharp pain. He slowly, almost reluctantly, turned around. Elena. She stood behind the counter. Her gaze was still calm and detached, but now it held something Mark couldn't decipher, a mixture of cold indifference, hidden strength, and a slight, barely noticeable, soundless smirk that seemed like the worst kind of torture. He looked at her, and suddenly, all the pieces of the puzzle scattered across his broken life fell into place. Her silent departure from their apartment. Her calm, deceptive, "everything is fine." He remembered the reservation for their anniversary at that hotel. He remembered his own frivolous, cruel words. He remembered his countless betrayals, which he had considered minor indiscretions. Everything he had so thoughtlessly thrown out of his life, everything he had considered unimportant, was now standing before him, thriving, shining, completely unattainable. Mark felt the world around him beginning to collapse. Finally and irrevocably, the ceiling of Literary Haven seemed to fall right on him. The walls began to press in. Suffocating, he tried to catch his breath, but his lungs wouldn't obey. The modest librarian he had despised, used, and manipulated had become the Comstock, one who calmly watched his downfall without uttering a single reproach, shedding a single tear, or even breathing a sigh of pity. She wasn't just Elena. She was his embodied, merciless retribution, his personal nemesis. He let go of the door handle. It slammed shut behind him. His world had collapsed, leaving behind only dust, ruins, and the bitter, unbearable taste of a total, absolute, irreversible defeat. He recoiled and, stumbling, went out into the street, leaving behind only the scent of despair and shattered hopes. The door closed quietly behind him, just as the door to their apartment had closed long ago, leaving him alone with the void that was now his only companion.